Hello, everybody. Welcome to Monday, April 12th, 2021. Mr. Perry here with your rundown of what we're doing this week. We're finally finishing off our natural selection. It seems like it's taken us a long time, but we had two kind of weird breaks in there. One being the IAR week, where we kind of didn't do too much with it, and then we had spring break in there, so we've only been looking at this stuff for 4 weeks, but it seems like a lot longer because of all the time that we've had not talking about it. So we're going to put our final bits and pieces of it on it this week, which is usually when we'd be gearing up and amping up for a test. But we've got something different planned for the end of this week because we figured a test isn't going to be good for this one because of how much this stuff has been spread out. So we got a different way to kind of put everything, summarize it together. We're going to get to that in Thursday and Friday's video. But today we're looking at our final piece of natural selection, and that's what is happening right now with things, and maybe looking at the not natural side of natural selection. So a couple of things before we get rolling with this is that first off, make sure that you do your bell ringer. And then secondly, we're going to be looking at some notes today. So in the Monday folder, you should have our whole notes going on in there. Let me bring it up over here. Here we go. There's our bell ringer, and boom, right there, you'll find a copy of the notes so you can follow along with it in there. You'll also see your assignments going to be in there in just a little bit. We'll talk about that. But I'm going to run down what we're going to be looking at in class here today. And I split up the last section. This is objective number 5. I've split this up over the next 3 days. So we're going to talk a little bit about it, do a little bit of a kind of activity / assignment that goes along with it, and I'll show you what that is. So it's more kind of smaller bite-sized chunks is what I want to think about it. So today's is all about selective breeding. And what selective breeding is basically how humans have done natural selection and not waited around for nature to do its stuff. It's basically been used forever for like farmers to improve their livestock and their crops to make the best livestock or crops possible. It's also known as artificial selection because it's not done by nature, it's done by us humans typically. It still uses the same law or the still kind of same ideas as everything else that we've talked about. It's just that we are controlling it. It still takes place over many generations. It's how we've turned wolves into dogs basically, and how we've domesticated things is through this fashion and through this manner here. So example, dog breeds. Dogs wouldn't exist and our different breeds wouldn't exist if humans did not intervene to breed them the way that we've chosen to breed them. Because there's no way that something like a Great Dane and a Chihuahua should be a part of the same species, but lo and behold, they are. Because we bred them for a specific need, and we have those traits specifically needed for those animals. Like for our the wiener dog or the sausage dog here, the dachshund, specifically bred to chase rabbits and things down into their holes. If you're looking for the reason why we bred them into existence, their long bodies fit into the holes. The hunters would hold on to their back legs as the dog went in, and then they would yank out the dog and the rabbit. Or in some cases, the badger, because they'd actually chase down some badgers too. Dachshunds are pretty vicious when it comes to that. And we've also done things with like cows and whatnot, where you've got cows that are specifically bred for beef, like Angus cows. Probably heard of Angus beef before. Or you've got specifically dairy cows that are meant to produce more and more milk, or different types of milks. Some milks like buttermilk and stuff, to have a richer fat content in there, are done by different cows. Basically what ends up happening is that we take the traits that we want out of mama and papa, make sure that they're the ones that are breeding, and then have those produce the offspring, in hopes that the offspring have a chance of inheriting the good traits. So you pick the parents with the best traits and hopefully get the offspring that has those good traits as well. And perhaps maybe they even get better traits. But we also done this with a lot of weird vegetables too. Because a lot of our vegetables that we eat aren't actual natural things that grow around. They're actually things that we have bred into existence, more or less. So if you take a look at all these things on the outside of the kind of surrounding there, the kohlrabi, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, cauliflower, broccoli, kale, all those kind of things coming from it, those are all from a mustard plant. It has just been a specific part that has been focused on, that has been allowed to grow and develop, that has turned it into a different type of vegetable. That's why things like Brussels sprouts and cabbage and even cauliflower and broccoli, they might sometimes have a similar taste to them because they grow from the same type of plant to it. Because you don't really go and walk out and see just a field full of broccoli naturally in the forest somewhere. It's because farmers have specifically bred for that part to be the part that gets grown and the part that gets larger. It's not something that would just be chosen naturally out there. So basically, how does selective breeding work? You decide what traits you want. You choose the parents that have that characteristic. You breed the parents together to see if the kids have it. And then you choose the best kids to be your next generation. And then you just repeat it over and over and over again until that trait gets better and better and better and better. So you can start off with corn, which is kind of a model of how corn started out. It used to be very tiny, very thin, but they would want bigger corn, fatter corn. You could sell more of it. You could sell for more money. You could feed more people. So you choose the corn that's the biggest to keep behind a plant the next year. You keep on doing that. Eventually, your whole field is going to be full of big corn. However, like with a lot of things, there could be some bad things that come from this. Because we're not letting nature decide on things, it could become that some diseases are going to be a lot more potent on those organisms. Because we're making them all the same, and a lot of them are coming from the same parents, it could mean that if a disease hits, it could wipe out the entire crop, which could be bad. It's also got a risk of having some recessive traits pop up that we might not actually catch until it's too late. Because we're so focused on one trait, we might not realize that we're actually doing harm because another worse trait has snuck in there, but because it hasn't affected our trait that we wanted, it actually is causing health problems for the plant or animal. It could be bad. It also just loses out in our gene variety. So maybe there's a trait that would have made things better if we just left it alone. We wouldn't know because we've now done this other stuff to it. So we've caused some of our own problems in that way too. All right, so that's day number 1 done. Let's take a look at your assignment that you're going to do. So if you go back on the Monday stuff, you'll have the assignment selective breeding worksheet. It's one of our Schoology assignments, so you got 2 attempts at it. It says 1, I gotta just change that number. But like I said, okay, so in this one we got some instructions up front. In this assignment, you'll visit 4 different stations discussing selective breeding in the real world. Read through the information and answer the questions as you go through the assignment. So you'll have this information here that you'll need to read through. This one's about milk and cows. And here's going to be our situation. There's a question that goes along with it. And then here's a follow-up question about that previous stuff. Actually, a couple of sets of questions that go along with that. And then it's going to give you a new one. This one's about cheese. And you'll do kind of a very similar thing. And there's 4 of these total. See, we got kind of a cow theme with it. So you'll just kind of answer off some questions dealing with that. Some of them you will have to pick multiple answers. Like it will say select 3 or select 2 or select 4. You just have to pick the ones that are the best then for it. Then you can submit it and you can see what's right or what's wrong, and you can take it again. I'll make sure that that is giving you 2 times, and that takes the highest score. And then yes, you can see if you got it right or wrong, but not with the correct answers. So, all right, so I already saved that. So that's your assignment, so make sure that you go about doing that. If you have any questions about anything, do not hesitate to email and ask. Otherwise, I hope you're back with us sooner rather than later. Tomorrow's thing is going to be very similar, except we're going to be talking about GMOs. So I'll have a very similar video up for tomorrow. So with that being said, hope you're doing well, staying safe, and I'll see you later. Bye.